Hello, everyone. Welcome to When Football Met Soccer. I hope you're all doing amazing, that you're having a fantastic week so far, and surviving the heat wave if it's summer where you are. And as you can tell from my lovely American accent, I'm American and I live in the US. And for once, we have exciting football news, at least in my lifetime, that Messi is now officially in the MLS, right? I'm sure you all saw the endless videos on Twitter and everything of him shopping around in Publix. For those of you who don't know, supermarkets in the US are very interesting. There's a lot of regional supermarkets. So you have, yes, your big Walmarts and Targets that are everywhere, right? But there are also regional supermarkets that are specific to each region. And if you go to the more southern states like Florida, one of the most common supermarkets you're going to see is a Publix. It's kind of like this mid-high range supermarket. And we saw videos of Messi, his wife, and his sons doing grocery shopping in Publix. My mom lives in Publix. I mean, she doesn't live in Publix. It's hilarious. My mom lives in Florida, and there were pictures also of his shopping cart. So much cereal. He's really embracing that American lifestyle. Although probably most of it is for his kids, not for him. But still, one can dream. And he kind of walks around the aisles with his family, and then after he leaves at the checkout, he gets bombarded. Well, bombarded is a relative term, right? Because if he's in Europe or South America, there's just no chance he's doing this. But because it's the US and his recognition is just a lot lower, even though it's Miami, he still has these, kids and older people who are asking him for autographs and photographs and whatnot. But after he does all that, they kind of push the cart outside and unload the groceries into his car and drive away. So he really is embracing and starting that suburban American life, because if you know, you know, right? This is your quintessential American experience where you and the family drive to the local grocery store, shop with your ginormous shopping cart, and then take it back to your car and drive back home. And probably leave your cart in a very inconvenient place for fellow shoppers and people who work at the grocery store. So he was officially unveiled as Inter Miami's new player this past weekend. It was a huge ordeal. Busquets joined him as well. David Beckham and the Mas brothers, who are the owners of Inter Miami, were there at the ceremony. Entire Beckham's family was there as well, because he has a famous family. And it was a big deal. There were a lot of reggaeton, a lot of Spanish singers who were there as well. And today, I also wanted to talk about the details of this deal and what happened, because The Athletic published a really interesting article about it. And the title is Inside the Lionel Messi to Inter Miami Deal, Seeing Off Saudis, Equity Offers, and Beckham and Co.'s Secret Trip. So it kind of outlines the entire timeline of what happened, and it is a very interesting insight into what actually happened to get Messi over here. And if you think about it, out of all the people that were interested in having him and recruiting him and having them play for him, you would think that, Miami is probably not at the top of that list. And MLS is not at the top of that list either, because he had made it very clear that he had certain desires when it comes to playing football, whether that's at Barcelona or whatever it is, right? The Athletic article says that Inter Miami has wanted to sign Messi for a long time, and it reached back to a meeting in 2019, right? But since then, they had to be really smart about attracting Messi, because Saudi Arabia has the financial means that no other league can really compete with realistically. And this year, so MLS Board of Governors met with Apple, who is now their new official partner. They met in Palo Alto. They talked about their new deal with the MLS Season Pass in collaboration with Apple TV. And actually, Senior VP of Services, Eddie Q, is a Cuban American from Miami. And him, as well as obviously the rest of the company, became interested in partnering up to bring Messi to the US. Although the deals are not, actually public, because actually a lot of the details of this deal is a bit opaque. But we do know that Messi will be getting a proportion of the revenue for these season passes that Apple TV will be providing viewers. And if you think about it also, Miami is the perfect city for Messi, right? It speaks Spanish, a lot of Spanish speakers. He has a pretty good fan base compared to maybe the rest of the other US cities. It's also much closer to Buenos Aires, where he can go home a lot easier than if he were in Europe or Saudi Arabia. His wife seems to really like Miami. His family, they vacation here a lot, along with a lot of other footballers who seem to really like Miami. And MLS was also very lucky because at the end of the day, you need to be at the right place at the right time, not just with the best offer, right? They were lucky in the sense that Barcelona was such a horrible financial situation that they couldn't manage all this smoothly. The main reasons that Messi left in 2021 was because of their financial issues, and he didn't even have a proper send-off because of it. And now, because they're still stuck in that same financial sticky situation, he doesn't want to go back to a place where nothing really has changed, and it would also impact the rest of the club and the other players negatively if they had to finesse his move back. You also have PSG, where he didn't have a great experience in the 2 years that he was there. The fans were booing him. He didn't really have a good welcome, despite having on paper a really good season with 20 goals and 20 assists. And yet people were still unhappy with him because he wasn't really engaging with fans. He didn't seem very passionate playing in Paris. And he actually later talked about his negative experience there along with his kids, not spending enough time with them and all that stuff. Also, what is etched into my memory is that apology video he made after traveling to Saudi Arabia to do his promotional photos. It was like a hostage video of him in the bathroom in a suit, filmed on an iPhone. It was very interesting. But yeah, all of that probably traumatized and scarred him. And so having all that conglomeration of things in its entirety all led to the fact that, I don't really want to play in these clubs that I didn't want to stay in PSG. I can't go to Barcelona. My family would not do well in Saudi Arabia. It is a Muslim country after all, and I'm not Muslim. Maybe I won't assimilate as well. And so MLS and Inter Miami seemed like, after all, the best choice. Inter Miami also made other additional efforts, right? Because they hired his former coach, Tata Martino, who was his coach at Argentina and Barcelona at some point. And obviously Busquets is also with him, who was a former teammate of his at Barcelona. And they played a long time together. And once his deal was announced in June, the beginning of June, tickets soared, pretty much were sold out for the first season that he would be here. And they were probably at least $300, $400, $500, and you had to get on a wait list to buy the season. You have to pay to get on a wait list to buy the season after that. All this hype without a deal even in place, right? And so it took more than a month for this deal to be finalized for the details. So even when Messi made the announcement video, he had not signed anything. There was no contract that he had signed. And so all this time it needed to take MLS, because remember, MLS is a little different because you're signing the deal effectively with MLS. They operate as one unit instead of individual teams. So in Europe, you'll be signing with a particular team, but with the US, you're signing with MLS. And so they need to coordinate, agree together, and they have different regulations as they do in Europe. We finally arrived in Miami on July 11th. They finally finalized the deal. It's approximated between $50 to $70 million a year, along with other benefits, like we talked about the Apple TV thing. There's also, he's also going to get a proportion of the jersey sales, which is probably going to be huge as well. And then probably in his clause somewhere is a similar deal that they gave David Beckham, which is that in the future he will be able to buy a share of an MLS team. Funnily enough, Ronaldo was asked about MLS recently, and his words were a subtle dig because he essentially outright said that the Saudi league is better than MLS. I wouldn't say he's entirely wrong, just because the Saudi League Pro League has been actively trying to make their league as competitive as the European leagues, whereas MLS has always been, well, we want players the top European players to come and retire here, or, past their prime and play their last years here so that they can, pass on some of their experience and their knowledge about football to the younger players here, but never with the objective to say, well, right now we want our league to be just as competitive and as good as the European ones. At least it's not clear to me that they've done this. Plus the financial means is just not the same as that of, Saudi Arabia. And so that discrepancy doesn't really necessarily mean that you can't really argue with Ronaldo is saying. I think he's completely right in saying that, yeah, the Saudi league is just more competitive, especially now this season, this transfer window. They've really just attracted a lot of new talent, a lot of them even at their prime, which is really interesting. So far, they've only really been targeting a lot of Muslim players because that pitch is going to be a lot easier to make if you are already Muslim. But nevertheless, his comments have sparked a lot of controversy in the way that maybe he comes off a little narcissistic to say, well, when I signed for Juventus, Syria wasn't doing so great and I put them back on the map. And now that I come to the Saudi League, I paved the way for all these players to come here now. And we're just, wherever I go, I make the team and I make the league better. Wasn't the case for Manchester United, but I guess we just ignore that. I mean, his second stint, not his first. With all this fanfare around Messi arriving and everything, he's already been training. We've seen videos of him training along with Busquets and other Inter Miami players. It's going to be interesting to see how many more people actually tune into MLS, tune into watching Inter Miami. Is it going to actually grow the football market in the US? I personally would be very excited to see that. There's still just not that much interest in football at all in America because there's so many other sports to watch. People are mostly engaged in, basketball, American football, baseball, and there's a lot of leagues. And so it's very difficult to get those sports fans to also watch football, right? Even with Messi here. The impact that he'll have, whether it's going to be much bigger than what David Beckham did and what Pelé did a long time ago, we'll see if he actually attracts and grows MLS and Inter Miami. I actually don't think it will be as huge. I do think it's the individual appeal. And once he's gone, that appeal and that interest is going to die down. But that's just me personally. I think he still has a couple good years left in him. Perhaps he will have some good performances in Inter Miami in this next season or two. But yeah, I do think that interest is going to die down once he leaves because it's him personally as the idolatry around him that is going to attract these people to go and watch him. People who may not even follow football that much, people who are just maybe general sports fans who have heard of him. And once he's gone, I don't necessarily believe that that's going to leave some everlasting impact on the sport in America. But maybe I will be wrong. I'd be happy to be proven wrong. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.